I knew the second I pulled into my driveway that somebody from Cedar Ridge Estates had crossed a line. And the crazy part is, they honestly thought I was just going to take it. I got home around 6:15 that evening, dead tired, shirt sticking to my back from working HVAC installs all day in August heat. And sitting right there on the edge of my side yard were 4 giant black garbage bags, an old rusted patio umbrella, and some busted white plastic lawn chair that looked like it lost a fight with a hurricane. And planted right in the middle of it all was this little laminated sign with the HOA logo on top. All neat and official, looking like they were doing me a favor. Temporary Community Overflow Disposal Area. Temporary. Man, I almost laughed reading that because nothing says entitlement quite like rich people calling your private property temporary community space. Now here's the thing. Technically my land sat outside their HOA boundary. Barely. My grandfather bought this acre back in the late 70s before all those cookie-cutter houses and fake luxury fountains showed up. Back then it was just woods, dirt roads, and coyotes screaming at night. Developers tried buying him out 3 different times over the years, but Grandpa Earl was stubborn in that old-school Appalachian kind of way. He used to sit on the porch with sweet tea and say, "Son, if a group of strangers starts telling you what color mailbox you're allowed to own, you already lost." And honestly, the older I get, the more I realize the man was a prophet. Cedar Ridge hated my property from the second they built around it. My truck wasn't shiny enough, my shed wasn't modern enough, my grass didn't look chemically engineered enough. Meanwhile, every house in there looked exactly the same, like somebody copied and pasted suburban anxiety across 40 acres. And leading that whole operation was a woman named Vanessa Holloway, HOA president, self-appointed queen of matching flower beds and passive-aggressive emails. You ever meet somebody who smiles with their teeth but not their eyes? That was Vanessa. Every conversation with her felt like getting fined by a kindergarten teacher. At first I honestly figured maybe one of the cleanup crews made a mistake. Cedar Ridge was doing their annual neighborhood cleanup week. Dumpsters everywhere, golf carts buzzing around, retirees power washing sidewalks like they were preparing for military inspection. So I called the HOA office trying to be reasonable. Big mistake. Vanessa answered on the 3rd ring with that syrupy customer service voice people use when they already think they're better than you. I said, "Hey, somebody dumped trash on my property." She goes, "Oh yes, that's part of the temporary overflow arrangement." Arrangement? I damn near dropped the phone. I said, "There is no arrangement. That's my land." And then came the sentence that changed everything. "Well, we'll probably have it removed sometime next week. It's really not that serious." Not that serious. I remember staring out my kitchen window at those trash bags while she said it. One of them already leaking something dark into the grass, flies swarming around it like it had been there for days. I told her I wanted it gone immediately. Her tone changed right away, got colder, sharper. "Mr. Bennett, the community is trying to improve neighborhood appearance standards. We assumed you'd want to cooperate." There it was. The real issue. They didn't see me as a neighbor. They saw me as the stubborn leftover piece that refused to disappear. I said, "You assumed wrong." And then she laughed. Actually laughed. Short little rich lady laugh, like I was some hillbilly getting emotional over garbage bags. "Oh, relax," she said. "It's just trash." Then she hung up. Now I want to be clear here. I'm not one of those internet revenge fantasy guys. I don't scream at waiters. I don't slash tires. I don't start fights. Most of the time I avoid drama entirely. But every once in a while somebody pokes at you long enough that your brain shifts gears into a completely different mode. And standing there in my kitchen, looking at their garbage sitting on land my grandfather fought to keep, I remembered something my cousin Wade had told me a few months earlier. Wade runs a small organic cattle farm about 10 miles outside Millbrook. Nice setup too. Rolling pasture, red barn, 20 head of black Angus, and a manure pit so foul it could probably strip paint off a truck door. And suddenly, I had an idea. Not an illegal idea. Not a violent idea. Just an agricultural idea. I drove out there first thing the next morning before sunrise. Wade took one look at my face and started laughing before I even explained. By the time I finished telling him what happened, he leaned against the barn wheezing like he couldn't breathe. "You want the liquid stuff?" he asked. I said, "I want the kind that makes people rethink their entire bloodline." That man slapped the side of a 55-gallon drum like it was a prize racehorse. "Oh," he said, "I got exactly what you need." Now, before anybody in the comments starts yelling that I went too far, let me explain something people outside HOA neighborhoods don't always understand. Communities like Cedar Ridge operate on perceived authority. Not actual authority, perceived authority. And that difference matters. According to standard procedure, an HOA only controls property that legally falls inside its governing boundaries. My land wasn't part of their charter, wasn't under their maintenance agreement, and sure as hell wasn't available for temporary use just because Vanessa decided it was convenient. From a legal perspective, dumping waste onto somebody else's property without permission can drift dangerously close to trespassing or illegal dumping statutes, depending on the county. But here's the psychological part that fascinated me most. This is a psychological trap a lot of entitled groups fall into. Once people get used to controlling small things, mailbox colors, lawn height, parking rules, they slowly start believing they control people too. And when nobody pushes back, that illusion grows stronger every year. Vanessa honestly believed I would fold because socially, everyone around her usually did. The lesson here is simple. Bullies rarely expect resistance from the one person outside their system. And once they realize their authority stops at the property line, panic usually shows up real fast. We loaded that drum into the back of my old Ford pickup right around sunrise. And let me tell you something. Even sealed shut, that thing smelled like Satan's septic tank. Wade ratchet-strapped it down while laughing his head off, and before I pulled away, he looked at me dead serious for half a second and said, "Now remember, Cole, a little goes a long way." I should have listened to him. Instead, I got inspired. I pulled back into my driveway around 8 a.m. Cedar Ridge was already awake, joggers out in matching activewear, sprinklers ticking across perfect green lawns, one guy washing an SUV that probably cost more than my first house. And sitting there beside my property line was still their trash pile, baking under the morning sun like some kind of monument to suburban arrogance. That's when I noticed something else. The HOA had added another sign. "Please do not remove community disposal materials." I actually stood there blinking at it for a second because the audacity was almost artistic. They didn't just dump trash on my land. They labeled it like they owned the place. That little sign pushed me from annoyed to committed. So I rolled the drum down near the fence line, directly across from Cedar Ridge's decorative entrance. The big brick wall with the fake wrought iron lettering and those expensive flower beds Vanessa treated better than most human beings. I popped the lid off the barrel and immediately regretted breathing through my nose. Sweet Lord, it hit like a physical attack. Now, if you've never smelled concentrated liquid cattle manure in August heat, there's really no polite way to describe it. Imagine wet garbage, roadkill, rotten eggs, and pure regret blended together into a steaming biological weapon. And the worst part? It lingers. I grabbed a shovel and started pouring a long dark strip right along my side of the property line. Slow, even, careful. By the time I finished, the soil looked radioactive. Then I took my rake and churned it into the dirt exactly like Wade taught me. The second that sun warmed it up, the smell bloomed. Not rose slowly. Bloomed. Like evil waking up. Around noon, I started noticing windows shutting all through Cedar Ridge. By 1 o'clock, people were outside sniffing the air with confused expressions like deer sensing wildfire. Around 2, the neighborhood Facebook group apparently exploded because phones started ringing all over the subdivision and residents kept driving slowly past my property trying to figure out where the smell was coming from. I sat on my porch drinking sweet tea, watching the whole thing unfold like it was live theater. Then Vanessa arrived. Black Lexus SUV. Oversized sunglasses. Blonde hair pulled tight enough to survive a tornado. She slammed the driver's door so hard, I thought the glass might crack. She stormed across the edge of my lawn, waving one hand in front of her face dramatically. What in God's name is that smell? I leaned on my rake real casual. Fertilizer. Her jaw dropped. Excuse me. Organic soil treatment, I said, getting ready for planting season. You cannot do this. That part made me smile. Actually smile. Because people like Vanessa always say you can't before checking whether they legally mean, I don't like it. I shrugged. County says agricultural soil enrichment is permitted out here. She looked genuinely offended that laws existed outside HOA bylaws. This odor is affecting the community. I glanced over at the garbage bags still sitting on my grass. Funny, I said. So is your trash. Man, I thought steam might actually start coming out of her ears. She stepped closer and lowered her voice like she was threatening a hostage negotiation. "If you don't remove this immediately, I'll contact the county inspector." I pointed toward the road. "Save yourself the drive. I already checked the regulations this morning." That was true, by the way. I spent 30 minutes online before touching that barrel because I'm petty, not stupid. Vanessa stood there frozen for a second, probably waiting for me to crack or apologize or act intimidated. Instead, I just took another sip of tea while the wind carried fresh waves of weaponized cow stink straight towards Cedar Ridge's clubhouse. She finally spun around and marched back to her Lexus, gagging the whole way. By sunset, the smell had fully settled into the neighborhood. And folks, it was magnificent. You could actually see the social collapse happening in real time. Families who usually sat outside eating dinner vanished indoors. Dog walkers started speed running their routes. One poor guy threw up beside his mailbox. Somebody tried burning citronella candles on their patio like they were fighting demons. The next morning, I opened Facebook out of curiosity and nearly choked laughing. People were losing their minds. This is a health hazard. My children can't play outside. It smells like a porta potty exploded inside a landfill. Can the HOA sue someone over airborne contamination? That last one nearly killed me. And still, my trash remained exactly where they left it. Day 2 got worse because heat makes manure stronger. Not weaker, stronger. The entire neighborhood started smelling like the world's largest cow had died angry. Even I had to admit it was becoming aggressive. Around lunchtime, the county inspector showed up. Older guy named Marvin. Gray mustache. Muddy boots. Looked like he'd spent 40 years dealing with idiots professionally. He stepped out of his truck, took one breath, then burst out laughing. Not a chuckle. A full deep belly laugh. Vanessa stood beside him looking horrified while he walked the property line, checking distances and drainage. Finally, he walked back over to us, shaking his head. "Well," he said, "smells awful, but he's legal." Vanessa looked stunned. "There has to be something you can do." Marvin shrugged. "Ma'am, county zoning allows agricultural treatment on private land outside subdivision authority." Then he looked at me. "Maybe don't overdo it." I nodded respectfully. "Wouldn't dream of it." The second he drove away, Vanessa gave me this look I'll never forget. Not anger anymore. Fear. Because now she understood something important. She couldn't control me. That realization hit her harder than the smell. By day 3, Cedar Ridge entered full panic mode. The HOA Facebook page turned into psychological warfare. Residents started accusing each other of supporting me secretly. One lady blamed rural masculinity culture, whatever that means. Another threatened to move. Somebody suggested hiring a private environmental attorney. One guy demanded emergency HOA dues be used for odor mitigation technology. Odor mitigation technology. For cow poop. America is incredible sometimes. Meanwhile, every 48 hours, I'd refresh the strip with just enough manure to keep the aroma alive. Not flooding it, just maintaining pressure. Like strategic warfare. And here's the thing nobody tells you about these upscale neighborhoods. Image matters more than comfort. Cedar Ridge could survive inconvenience. What they could not survive was embarrassment. Guests started complaining. Delivery drivers rolled windows up before entering. Realtors avoided showing nearby homes. The smell became social poison. On the morning of day 5, I woke up to the sound of trucks outside, looked out my window, and nearly smiled myself unconscious. 2 HOA maintenance guys in reflective safety vests were hauling every single bag of garbage off my property. The busted lawn chair too. No arguments. No notes. No fake signs. Just silent cleanup. I walked outside while they worked. One of them avoided eye contact and muttered, "We're just doing what they told us." "I know," I said. "Appreciate you cleaning it." Then I added the important part. "But the fertilizer stays." That afternoon, Vanessa came back. Except this time she wasn't furious. She was exhausted. No sunglasses now. Hair messy. Face tense. She carried a manila folder under one arm, like somebody walking into divorce court. The smell hit especially hard that day too because humidity trapped it low to the ground. You could practically chew the air. She stopped halfway up my driveway, trying not to gag. "Mr. Bennett," she started carefully, "the HOA would like to resolve this matter." Resolve. Amazing how vocabulary changes once rich people get uncomfortable. I crossed my arms. "Go ahead." She opened the folder and handed me a typed agreement. Cedar Ridge offered to professionally restore the damaged section of my lawn, reimburse cleanup costs, and include a $100 nuisance courtesy payment. $100. I looked at her, then at the paper, then back at her. You really still don't get it, do you? Her jaw tightened. What exactly do you want? And there it was. The surrender question. I said, I want a legally signed acknowledgement that nobody from Cedar Ridge HOA will ever dump, store, stage, or place any material on my property again. Ever. She hesitated. I continued. And if it happens again, your HOA agrees to pay $50,000 per day until it's removed. Her eyes widened instantly. That's absurd. I glanced toward the property line where fresh afternoon heat was cooking another wave of manure into the atmosphere. You're welcome to decline. Right on cue, the wind shifted. Vanessa physically recoiled. I swear to God the timing felt supernatural. She closed her eyes for a second, defeated in a way I don't think she'd experienced before. Because this wasn't really about garbage anymore. It was about somebody outside her system refusing to kneel. Finally, she pulled a pen from the folder. Fine. She signed. Right there on the hood of her Lexus. The Queen of Cedar Ridge Estates signing surrender papers while standing in livestock fumes thick enough to stun wildlife. Honestly, poetic ending. That evening I watered down the entire strip and spread fresh topsoil over it. By the next afternoon the smell started fading. 2 days later the air was normal again. Quiet. Peaceful. And from that day forward, not one single bag of trash ever touched my property again. Not even a leaf. You know what's funny about the whole situation? It was never really about garbage. That's just what started the fire. The real issue was respect, or more specifically, the assumption that some people deserve it automatically while others are expected to quietly surrender theirs for the sake of community harmony. And honestly, I think that's why stories like this hit such a nerve online. Most people have dealt with some version of a Vanessa before. Maybe not an HOA president. Maybe it's a boss, a landlord, a neighbor, some smug little authority figure who spent so long getting their way that they genuinely stopped seeing other people as equals. Now, obviously, before somebody turns the comments section into a war zone, no, I'm not recommending everybody go weaponize manure every time life gets annoying. That's not the lesson here. The lesson here is understanding leverage. According to standard procedure, bullies usually escalate only when they believe resistance will stay uncomfortable for you and convenient for them. The second consequences become mutual. Attitudes change real fast. And from a legal perspective, this whole thing could have gone very differently if I had crossed certain lines. That matters too. There's a huge difference between standing your ground and doing something reckless. I checked county regulations before I touched that barrel because emotions make people stupid when they stop thinking 3 moves ahead. But psychologically, this is the part nobody talks about enough. This is a psychological trap communities and power structures fall into constantly. When everybody around you complies, you start confusing compliance with consent. Cedar Ridge wasn't shocked that I got angry. They were shocked I didn't back down. That's what broke the pattern. And honestly, I think Vanessa learned something too, even if she'd never admit it out loud. Control works great inside systems built around agreement. Outside those lines, you're just another person talking to another person. The lesson here is simple. Boundaries only matter when people defend them. So now I want to ask you guys, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have handled it peacefully, gone straight to legal action, or done exactly what I did and let nature handle the negotiations? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare yourself, trust me, I want to hear that story too.